I was a systems engineering undergrad. I was also a military child growing up. And so I lived in over 9 different places, different states actually, and 3 different countries growing up. And so I never really had an opportunity to study um, the history of race. I mean, I had whatever the public school system offered me. However, I experienced being in an all-Black school. I experienced being the only person of color in my advanced program in a public school. I experienced being the only woman of color, well, the only African-American woman in my engineering program of over 75 people. And so I had a lot of experiences where I knew race was a factor for me, or I knew the resources in one school was a lot different than the resources in another school. And so instinctively and experientially, I kind of understood how racism shows up and impacts different communities. My father's from the inner city of St. Louis, Missouri. I would get bused from that inner city to an external county school, and I knew what was happening on that street versus what was happening in the external county. And so I had those lived experiences. However, I didn't always have the confidence of how to explain my experiences to others in a way that they could really understand and receive across difference. And so when I came into this work as an early professional, one of the things that was important for me is just really deepening my understanding of the language and how, in the terms, diversity, what does it mean? Equity, what does it mean? In a way that I can then explain to others. I also deepened my own understanding of my own journey and the privileges that I have had, even as a woman of color, and really holding on to that and thinking about what is the power that I have in my own lenses that I bring. And so one of them is just being a military child, experiencing different school systems, gave me a huge lens to what happens at the school system level. It also, being a military child, allowed me to live almost a middle class type of lifestyle than I would have if I just was born and raised in inner city St. Louis, where my dad was from. And so acknowledging that level of privilege, acknowledging that I went to a great college, a 4-year college right after graduating from high school, that education was a level of privilege. And so part of this work allowed me to reflect on my own experiences and really understand the areas of privilege that I had so that I could leverage it. Like, I had privilege in the organization when it came to my position, when it came to the access that I had to the C-level staff within the organization. And so how am I using that to promote equity and to support others who don't necessarily have that access in our organization? And so I grew a ton in just understanding my own lenses, and then that translated into how do I leverage that for others. And I guess the last piece I would say in terms of my own learning journey is just how do I grow as a leader in this work, both in the skills of facilitation. How do I handle the tough stuff, the hard stuff? And I remember having many conversations with our external consultants, like, how did you handle that? Or I'm surprised you did this in this way. And I don't know if I could have handled that way, but over time, you get used to some of the common characters, per se, that are in a learning room or in a learning session. And there is a skill around facilitation. There's also just DEI knowledge that a facilitator brings that really kind of helps bring groups along. And so I grew a lot in that aspect. And the last piece in terms of learning as a leader in this space was really around how to really be strategic, how to set goals annually, how to partner with leaders, because the work can't be owned by one person. The work can't be owned by just the HR department. So how do you really get managers and leadership to own this for their departments? And that is a skill. There's a lot of strategy involved with that. And I really learned a lot of that over time. And so when I think about my learning journey, it's like I've learned a lot. It's all of those different pieces.